All right. So, hi everyone. I'm Aaron Baker. I'm a classroom support technician here at Stephen F. Austin State University in Nacogdoches, Texas. So came up with I'm a data guy, so I was like, hey, data analytics and AV, that's something I do here, and it seems like there's various ways of doing it. But this session we're actually gonna do something a little bit different. I want to try something new here. So instead of us three kind of talking all together what we do and kind of a discussion roundtable, what we're going to do is some splash presentations, like where each one of us kind of give like a little 5-10 minute presentation of like how we're doing data analytics within our departments. And so let me go ahead and I'll kick things off here and do some sharing. Make sure I share the right thing. But one things that what I've started to do is we don't really have like a lot of the monitoring and all that to get some data, but some of the data that we're trying to push through to is what rooms are getting utilized that need that AV equipment. And so what I've actually been doing has been we use Ad Astra as our scheduling profile, and there's a report that they have that pulls in all the section hours per week for the room. So I pull that and I go through each every room and sort through that. But let's see, let me get the thing to go. There we go. So why are we doing this? It's like no really no other metrics from the monitoring aspects. We kind of want to know what rooms are being used the most. We don't want to waste our money on putting in equipment that are not getting used. And go from there. It helps with our budget decisions, like okay, how much we have this amount of budget, how many rooms can we do, and all this other stuff. And especially when you have so many rooms, especially what we're trying to go through, we're trying to make sure we can have where the bring your own device input. It helps with that decision paralysis of what rooms to go ahead and do the upgrade on. So how I usually do it, we'll go through and we'll get all the section hours per week and total hours per building, blah, 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 and all that stuff. And then I'll usually go through then and then rank out the most used room per hour all the way to the least used room. And then from there, I'll take that and go through what rooms have we already upgraded, which rooms have been are getting up there where they have equipment but don't are starting to age out, and then some rooms that don't even have equipment at all. So those are my various color schemes on my Excel document that I do. And it really helps drive that data decision of like, okay, Ferguson 183 there in that picture gets 36 hours, is our 14th used room every week. That doesn't have any, that one has an aging out equipment. It's on red. We need to go ahead and get that replaced. That McKibben Ed 351, it's also a highly used room at 30 hours a week. But it has and also aging out equipment that needs to get out there as well. So we go through and sort it out. That's sorted out by we have our Zoom rooms that we need upgrading, the rooms that don't have upgrades yet, and other non-Zoom room but have upgraded equipment or upgraded aging out equipment that we also need to upgrade. So went through, created that list, and we based our decision on stuff like that. And so that's pretty much what we do here. It has been mostly useful. We have later since found out that because of we're doing some other things in the registrar department, that some of the rooms that we have upgraded have gone offline. So we're now starting to work more with our registrar department of, hey, what rooms are the faculty needing? Like, we put money and equipment into these rooms. Let's use these rooms over some of the rooms that literally is just a room in the PC in the room projector. There's no document camera or anything like that. So we're trying to work with them more to get where um, the I'll train up good more where we can actually get the useful information out too of like, hey, this is what you need. Here you go. We can spend money and get these rooms upgraded, and we can finally work towards getting those like rooms for every room on campus as well. And so that's all. That's it from my presentation. We'll pass it on to either Craig or Donovan who wants to go next.
Go ahead, Greg.
All right, sure. So I don't have flashy slides or presentations or fun data, but I guess I'll talk to you a little bit about my what we do here, what kind of works, and why we do what we do. So I take a very broad definition of data analytics. So data from, of course, numbers. So I'll start with that. We do track usage hours of devices. So whenever the display is on, the source is active, and that source is selected, and the projector is unmuted, like with those combination of criteria, then we start counting, okay, is that device actually being used? So that's useful for, seeing, do they actually use the Blu-ray player? No, they don't. Do they use the document cameras? Half of them have zero use, half of them have it used half the time. So there's very distinct usage there. Other devices get used more or less. So we use that to capture the data. So just based on the criteria, we start capturing that. We do that in Crestron Fusion, the Room View, the old version, Fusion RV, whatever it's called. Haven't migrated that to um, was the
XIO.
XIO cloud. Yeah, I was like, I had it in my head. I couldn't get it out. Yeah, the XIO cloud. So, but we're working on doing something similar with our QSys systems and QSys Reflect. We're also experimenting with Excite's platform. So trying to gather all these different things to help inform us. So the actual data is one thing. Another piece of the data analytics that we are capturing, which we just wrapped up and I have to start analyzing now, is our faculty survey. We put out a faculty survey at least once every other year to kind of get a pulse, formally to get their feedback. From just from formal survey responses, Google Forms, things like that we can sort through. But in between that, I think it's really important that another piece of data analytics is to actually sit in the classrooms and observe them, see what's going on, because there's a lot of things that don't get reported always, but you can just observe. Like if you're seeing an instructor struggling with something, you can use that as a data point to say, all right, well, if this person is struggling, other people must be as well. So that's another data point. Of course, another data point are service tickets from our help desk. So we, of course, track all incidents, whether they're user error or not. If it's user error, it's not always the user's fault that it's an error. It could be a design issue. Like we haven't designed something to be easy enough for them to operate or understand without instruction. So we use that data to determine what we're going to do next as well. Let's see. So I mean that's a really broad shot of what we do at our university. We're small enough that because I'm the only AV person dedicated to installs and upgrades and maintenance and troubleshooting, we have another AV person that does strictly event setups and operations. But we're small enough that it's easy. I would say easy with an asterisk, just because I've been here for a long time, to get a pulse on what we need, who needs it, how old the rooms are, things like that. So, because we have, I'd say about 75 to 100 classroom spaces and then another 100 or so random spaces that get used for all kinds of other things. And they're constantly using spaces for their for unintended use. Like they'll take a classroom and want to do an event there, so it has to support a whole bunch of different things. So coming up with a classroom standard, I use that as a very loose term because they have to do so many different things. But so that's where we're at. So hopefully that's helpful to somebody. So and hopefully that starts fire off some conversations. I see things in the chat, and I'll catch up with some of the chat while I hand it over to Donovan.
Thanks. First of all, I'm really happy to be here again. I've been absent a little bit lately, so but if I go through this presentation, you might figure out why. Um, we recently, to talk about our data analytics and what I'm going to talk about today, budget wise, I want to give you just a little bit of clarification. We got merged into central IT, and um, we got merged into a single AV department responsible for all 7 campuses of West Virginia University. So our workload went from about 110 spaces to about 450 spaces overnight. So, and then getting a handle on all those things, right? Because there were a lot of places that we had never been and never were a part of, and then getting all that pushed together. So, going into that, uh, talking about network monitoring, being the mixed campus that we are now, we don't really have a standard network monitoring tool. We're looking at Libra NMS as a up-down uh, uh, source for just making sure things are on and online. But as things go forward, we're looking at those things going forward. We've done Excite. We demoed with them. We've done a couple other programs that we looked at, but so looking at asset management and tracking and data for budgets on a large scale. We didn't know initially how to approach this. We could have built. Everyone had their own Excel sheets. Everyone had notes scribbled on papers stuck to a corkboard about where things were. Getting all of that information into a single spot and then being able to track that in a meaningful way was what we were looking to do. And what we came up with was a service called Talem. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with this or not, or have been around it. Talem is a company they were AV guys like us in higher ed and were having the same kind of issues, and came up with this program to track assets. Going into this, if I go into what was my old campus, I can open up any room, see what the components that we needed to track are in there, what those prices were and when they were installed, which was the big piece for us. And then we said, okay, so we know that, we have old gear. Great. How do we go forward and try to make that worthwhile? So again, like what Aaron does, we pulled a report from 25 Live, from our scheduling software, and said, what are our top rooms? And then now we can cross-reference that with our assets, saying, okay, how old are those assets? Or is that something we need to prioritize? And we can prioritize room usage versus asset age, and then be able to push that out as a meaningful thing. Now, what this program does really well that we really like about it is that if I want to go through and see, so we had never been able to have a seat at the table with our provost and do real budgeting and have that conversation, because there were so many different departments that were asking for money for different things. So as a certified, what is now called classroom and event technology, we can now go and say, this is the budget for keeping the classrooms going at West Virginia University as a whole. But to do that, we needed a way to run a report that told us, where we were. So what this does is this actually does an end of life report. And if I do this for this stuff, kind of defaults if you need to. You can always go through and if I want to run this for a specific building, or just auditoriums, or just classrooms, or anything that you identify as being needed. And what this does is it'll actually spit out a report based on currently what it would take for you to become current, and things that are going to go end of life next year, in 2 years, and 3 years, and 4 years, and 5 years. And you can push this out to 10 if you need to, and do those kinds of reports. And it gives you you can break it down by what items there are, or you can break it down by locations. So you can actually go into this report and say, these are the locations that have end of life gear in it. So the scary part is when you take this number to a budgeting person and say, well, I need $1.9 million just to be current. They go, well, what has everybody been doing forever? Well, what we've been doing is getting by. We've just been break fixing, right? This is everything that we would need to be current. This number is crazy. No one's ever going to give you that kind of money, right? Unless you get a grant or unless you get um, something outside of there. So then that comes back into using that data on room usage and on, what are our oldest rooms, what are the oldest gear, and being able to say, okay, these are our priorities going forward. We know we have X amount of dollars. How much can we get done in that amount of time? And then now we can schedule that out over the next 10 years and figure out how much of this we can get done. So that's what I've been doing. I've been putting all of this stuff into going around to every room and finding all of the gear and putting it into a meaningful spreadsheet.
Cool. I actually it's interesting watching this because here at SFA we're kind of doing both of what you are doing at the same time too. Like I've started working our Fusion server again, just trying to start collecting the data that we need and learning how to do that because strong documentation isn't that great in my opinion on how you actually program it to get the data you want. But then like we're also looking at the asset tracking here too because we got the same thing where it's we right now all of our equipment list is in a big spreadsheet that we keep track of that when we update it, it has all the serial numbers, all that. Like we're starting to go back and look at the old POs, figure out when did some of this equipment get put in, so we can track the age and whatnot. Um, something that I kind of want to open up to. I know Atkins had asked in the chat. I think it was a cool idea. Was they're building he said he was building something for the Q system, trying to figure out where to store the data. And open up to y'all guys, or even open up to everyone who's listening too about, what do you do with that data? You spin up a cloud SQL server, get someone hosted on-prem, like does someone handle with that or go for what?
Yeah, and Atkins, I kind of um, we have not done anything with AI or anything like that yet, putting things together. We are basically literally looking at, how old things are and how much money we have and picking out uh, what this is doing, what our analytics are doing is basically just giving us that those top rooms that need the most attention. So we're literally just using that as decision making uh, as a decision making tool for what we're doing. We're not just kind of, well, that room needs done over there. We should probably do it. We're actually making a real plan of these rooms need done before these rooms, and this gear needs replaced before that.
Yeah, I think for the chat, I'm seeing what Joe wrote about taking the data and telling a story with the data, and that's a great point too. Like, so there's, the question also is, what are you doing with the data? Not just where do you store it, like why are you collecting it in the first place? Like, yeah, to your point is, we can use it for our purposes, like, well, what do we need to do next, and which rooms are getting used, but also to tell that funding story of like, hey, this is what we need, this is why we need it. So what data
Yep.
tells our story that helps convince a finance person, like, well, why should we spend money on these classrooms? Like, are they really breaking? Are they working? Are they good enough? Like, can you just get another couple years out of them? So we have to think about what questions are we asking? What questions would they ask of us? And then how can we pull that data to answer those questions in a way that, helps us with our jobs day to day to keep the classrooms running and ultimately, for the students, right?
I will say that from the meeting with the provost's office and the budget team, that was the first time they'd ever seen anything broken down into like real reasons why that has to be replaced and dates on, well, these things are 10 years old. we're way past our life cycle on these, and being able to say, this is real dollars uh, for equipment that needs addressed. Usually they would get a bid and say, well, it's how much is that room going to be? Well, it's going to be about $52,000 to fix, or we'll get a one-off bid from a vendor to come in and fix something. And this was a big picture look at the state of the university as a whole that no one had ever seen before. So it really took some conversations in a different direction where now, they were focused on, making things look pretty and paint and putting tile down in places like that, which is important, especially for classroom satisfaction. If you look at student satisfaction surveys, those are huge, data points for us to say, well, we hate going in that room because it smells funny, right? So then you have to have those conversations with facilities and be able to do those things. We having those conversations now with real money involved, and not just, well, we think we need this. This is no, this is the amount of money we need right now. Those conversations had never happened at our university before, and it's been an interesting shift in conversation.
Yeah, I know here we're kind of starting that conversation to provost office as well. Director had brought up to him recently because we have a building that was built in 2008, and they have in-ceiling, in-grid projector screens that are starting to go bad. They were in that time period where the material daylight had used is starting to deteriorate and all that, and some the motors are starting to go out and whatnot. And that we were telling them, like, we don't have the budget to replace all the screens, neither does the department, and we have, I think, 7 to 10 screens that need to get replaced because they're starting to stick to each other, or starting to stick when it rolls up, and it's not coming back down and all this other stuff. So we're starting to get that conversation going and trying to figure out some of that monetary. How can we expend our budget but not spend too much on top of that as well? Um, I saw something back in chat. Um,
Yeah, there's some discount programs from
yeah,
daylight for those old screens.
I wrote it down. Of course, I wrote it down too quick. I can't read my chicken scratch. But one thing I wanted to bring up that you had brought up too, Donovan, like you talking about with the network monitoring. That's something we've done here too. We used oh, what's it called now? I don't even remember now what it's called offhand. But that was our first intro into some of this monitoring stuff, trying to get data of like trying to figure out how often it's going down, when it's going down, all this other stuff. But I that was that now my mind's coming back to me. That's what I want to talk about. You mentioned life cycles. Do y'all have an AV life cycle standard, or do you just decide like, hey, it's been this old, we need to go ahead and replace it?
Uh, Craig, you want to take that one?
Sure. Well, I think it says something that we're both kind of laughing at that.
Yeah,
And I think, if you're not laughing at this, like, congrats, like, you've got it figured out, and that's awesome. I know for
yeah,
a lot of us, we struggle in terms of like being like having the
yeah.
refresh cycle up here and having it stated, but also like, can we actually do this? When does it really happen? Like, well, yeah, I want to do things, 6, 7, maybe 8 years. I have some rooms that are like 10 years, and to be totally honest, with all the, COVID, put us back about 3 to 4 years in terms of refresh because they're like, well, all this money has to go to here. We're going to do hybrid. We install all this stuff. And then, it was mandated. Then, all right, other things got left behind. So we're still catching up from that, to be realistic. So, do we have a whole lot of spare parts to keep those 10-year-old rooms going? Because we just haven't had time to get to them yet. Yeah, but um, we do the best we can, and we can set our goals and intentions, but a lot of times they just slip, and for reasons that we have no control over. At least that's my experience here, and we're doing our best, and we're keeping the rooms rolling, but you know, yeah, there's
And
some
the
old
biggest
dilemmas.
enemy, yeah, the biggest enemy of standardization and refresh is budget, right? We just when you look at it, especially a public school organization like we are, and where every dollar is accounted for, even before it's in the checkbook. Um, it's hard to convince them that you know, well, we need twice the budget we had last year because, you know, uh, we have that much more stuff going bad. Um, so there's a lot of this, you need, enough to get by kind of mentality and, well, it's good enough kind of mentality. And what we're finding now is that students are not responding to good enough anymore. They're wanting more, they're wanting better, they're wanting it to feel better, they're wanting it to look better, they're wanting it to their their experience in the classroom uh, is is they want it to be better. And there's a lot of talk about what they what they call a digital campus and this hybrid learning model that people are looking for. Um, there's a study that just came out a couple of days ago that said that most college students, there was like 67% of college students want at least one class that is online every semester. And getting that, you can't have that kind of conversation about digital content without ingestion. And where's that ingestion coming from? It's coming from the classroom. It's coming from the teacher. It's coming from, a lot of times it's coming from your AV system that's in that room. So we have to start driving some of those conversations as well.
Yeah, so I think the refresh cycle is one thing, but also why are you refreshing? Is it just to replace the old equipment with the same thing? But I think we're finding, as I'm sure everyone is that like we really need to take that opportunity to say what is working, what isn't working. How can we make this easier, lower the friction level, make it easier to fire up a Zoom from the person's laptop or whatever. So like here, in Eastern Pennsylvania in the Northeast, bad weather, we'll cancel classes. We have a ton of commuters, so. The instructor will be like, well, okay, some people made it to class because they're resident students, but let's fire up a Zoom so the commuters that can't drive or shouldn't drive can also come to class. So making that really easy to do is really at the top of our mind. So it's not just, well, how old is the room, but does the room do what we need? Even if we refreshed it, 4 years ago, which is might be new by our standards, it might not do what we need it to do. So we're doing
Yeah,
maybe some partial refreshes, some reconfiguring, reprogramming is a big thing. So, we're stretching out the equipment, maybe just retooling it and making it better. So that's
Chris brings up a great point, and it was kind of going back to how you're um, monitoring your usage stuff. Saying, well, they don't use the document camera in that room ever, so when it goes bad, I'm not replacing it. That's a cost savings to us now, right? And what we have found, like the rooms that we were designing 5 and 6 years ago, we're not designing the rooms like that anymore, right? Because we thought, well, we're going to give them a student camera, we're going to give them a camera for the professor, we're going to give them a whiteboard camera, we're going to have, room mics for all the students, we're going to do all this stuff, and we found out that most people were not using cameras for presentations. They were using lavalier and PowerPoint. They didn't want to be seen. They didn't care about seeing the students, and that's it. They're not using whiteboards anymore. Everything is, on a digital form or PowerPoint or a digital whiteboard. So we're able to say, well, we're taking all that stuff out now, right? So that's a cost savings to us too, and that's driven by the data that we're getting from surveys and from usage reports and those kind of things.
Yeah, like we'll even come in and like, okay, like we notice like a dog cam's not getting used. Like we'll go and repurpose it. Like if it's not being used, why wait? Why just have it sitting here collecting dust when we have a perfectly other good room that needs one? That we'll go and move equipment around just so that it can at least get some type of an upgrade, and well, actually that equipment will see the use and all that type as well. Let's see. I saw another fun one. Let's see if I can find it again. Uh, I think we actually kind of hit up on it. We're talking about like either do we do full replacements or partial replacements too on these upgrades? Like, do we just like let it go till it dies, or what exactly with that?
I think we've all had that conversation. What is considered important to the room? What's the core what's the core section of the room, right? Can we get away from, well, that we really don't need a new computer monitor on here. We don't need, the microphone still works. So until it breaks, we're going to leave it in here. But do I need to replace the DMPS because, it's bricked? Or do I need, we're switching out, like in our instance, we're switching out, we have a ton of AMX gear that we're getting rid of, that was legacy from an old department. We as we switch that out, what else in that room needs fixed? Well, it's really just the control system that's bad. So the projector we did last year and the screen's still okay. Let's just do the core piece of the room and coming up what that core assets are.
So I have another sort of interesting data analytics question that I don't really have the answer for, but I'm starting to kind of work on. So I'm curious to see what you and everyone else in the chat and everyone else thinks. So, kind of going off of the EDUCAUSE learning space rating system, um, using that as like a standard to try and tell the story about the learning space as a whole. And I know that some pieces are more applicable to exactly what we do than others, but looking at it from a snapshot standpoint of trying to tell the administration what spaces need attention, things like that. I've been sort of experimenting with an idea that because there's not much of me to go around and I have limited time to dive into certain things, but so it's like, all right, well, what if I could use the pictures that we have of every space and feed that into an AI that can then rate it based on the EDUCAUSE standard that I tie to it. And can I automate some of that data collection through the use of pictures of each classroom? And actually was using, playing around with Gemini for a bit to see, okay, here's the standard. What can you do to help me collect data on this with just a picture to minimize my time? If I go take 4 pictures of the room from one from each corner, uh, what sort of information can you decode as AI about this room when you tie it to the standard? So, and then whether or not, and it's like, oh, well, I could tell, whether the room is optimized for this, and that. Give me a whole list of things that it could tie to the LSRS and other things that it can't, which is fine. But I just thought that, maybe that was we can leverage AI in a way that's useful for what we need. I don't know. What do y'all think about that? Am I crazy? Am I on the right track? Wrong track?
I I
No.
find that interesting. I haven't thought about doing it that way either. I know just kind of in general, like what kind of like no we see a room that the kind of like the equipment's there, but like maybe like some furniture later, like whatnot too that we'll try to like maybe ask in our designs and like, hey, what would you do differently here as well on top of if we were to do a full refresh on our room, but I never thought about just giving pictures of AI and like, hey, what are your thoughts on the AV in the space and all that?
Yeah, so like adding context too, like what's the screen size, what are the viewing angles and things like that. You can sort of feed that information and what's the seating arrangement? Where's the instructor lectern? What are the pathways? Is it accessible physically? There's certain criteria that it can detect and look at and process more quickly to accelerate that data, at least a portion of the data collection process. So um, just something I've been looking at as AI gets increasingly better at multimodal input, not just text, but the pictures and other things for context to allow it to sort through it and look at for us and to analyze the data of the space as the whole, not just our laser focus on the technology, but the technology is a piece of the larger space. So how much does lighting get into it? And other things, acoustics and, all the other stuff that is sort of adjacent to having our systems be successful when it's installed. So, ambient light, are the lights right over the projection screen, things like that, that ultimately will make us more successful. So, it's things that I'm thinking about. So, again, I'm
Yeah.
interested to hear, what y'all think.
No, I think that's really interesting. I've not messed with any of that enough to have a meaningful comment. about it one way or the other, especially in the different modal versions of AI. I would love to be able to load a picture of my room and say, look, this isn't working. We're getting, you know, low satisfactory scores with this room. We don't know why. They're just saying it's bad. What what do you think we should do to make this room function better? Um, what has kind of happened because of us being more data driven, we're now able to have real conversations with facilities about, hey, we're going to redo this room, but we've noticed that, the lighting is really bad in here or the paint is really bad in here too. You know, why don't we schedule this together? We'll do the AV part. You guys handle, doing lights and paint, and we'll make this room, the best that it can possibly be. Here's our satisfaction scores that we got. You know, here's why we think that we should be doing this. And those were conversations we weren't able to have before either. So I do think that. And Annie, yes, it is. Yeah. Um, so by the data that I have been given, and just speaking from my standpoint, we are only replacing things that are of age that need to be replaced. Right. If I'm at, 4.75 years on my Panasonic projector, I'm not replacing that one right now, right? Because it's still technically under warranty. And let's be honest with all of us, if you get something replaced and that's, we're always running 2 or 3 years after warranty on everything, right? We love that there's a warranty. We love the 5-year warranty. I was working with the approved program. That was something that absolutely we had to have, to get a HETMA approval. It was a great warranty. But we never hit that mark, right? I never get to replace things that are just out of warranty or just under warranty, right? So
I noticed Atkins has his hand raised. Did you still have a question there, Atkins, or have a comment?
Well, I had a comment if you didn't mind me interjecting myself.
Go for
please.
By all
All
means.
right. Sorry to join the panel impromptu. Um, the comment was about the LSRS. So we we went through that process and scored all of our rooms, and we learned quite a bit in that process. But one of the main things that we learned, which was a surprise to us, which was how little the technology played into the overall room score. So uh, it has been beneficial because we have been able to have different conversations with facilities about classrooms using those data points. Um, and in our campus, room upgrades is a different process and budget than technology upgrades. So it has informed the room upgrade process and made a difference in that regard. And it's the same conversation, right? We're using data to inform what our priorities are. So that's been good. But the interesting thing is for us, our rooms were similar in functionality kind of across the board. But the equipment was, 12, 13, 14 years old. So when we updated that equipment with new equipment, because we were already kind of standardized on functionality, we only saw an LSRS score increase of maybe 3 to 6 points per room. And there's a total, if you're not familiar, there's a total of about, I think it's 72 points. So it was a pretty minimal impact because the functionality was already there. It's just the technology was old. So I don't, that was surprising to us, and I thought I would contribute it here.
Thank you. Appreciate the insight.
One data point that I just have considered about just now, what we kind of do too, is have you Do you use any like your previous ticket data for rooms of knowing like, hey, this equipment probably needs to go be head edged out, or this equipment's not even working for what the space needs? Does that help any drive any decisions with there?
Yeah, we track tickets in Jira, and we start flagging if we notice that a room is continually coming up in tickets. We start flagging that and start that gets added to our refresh list.
Yeah, we do something very similar in terms of just making sure that if there's a consistent problem, that oh, why does you know XYZ device in this classroom have to be unplugged and plugged back in like once every other week? It's like, all right, well, yeah, it fixes the problem, but there's something else going on if we have to keep on doing this. So yeah, we'll do that sort of thing all the time and just examine the tickets and look for trends, things like that. We also pull logs from things like QSys Reflect, analyze that and see what things might be dropping offline momentarily, glitches that we don't necessarily see if we just pull up the dashboard and look at it like, oh, the room's great. But then if we look at the log, it's like, oh, all these errors were piling up. And then, oh, but they fixed themselves. But all right, well, why did they happen in the first place? And what is dropping offline? For example, we found an issue with one of our camera plugins to control our PTZ Optics cameras, which are phenomenal. Thank you, PTZ Optics, for sponsoring the session. Um, but the control module that we had used for QSys, I had gotten it off a Facebook group, and so the code was okay, it worked, but we found that it was kind of dropping out and it was causing some errors. So we ended up taking that, refining it, and fixing it, all because we were able to analyze the logs and using data analytics to point us in the right direction to make things more reliable. So not necessarily a direct problem, but indirect problem now that isn't a problem. So things like that.
Yeah, I'll say I've had a similar, but it was crash on. I had created a module to control some new audio equipment we had for a room, and be one of those of not working for the instructor. By the time I got over there, it was working again. So yeah, checking out those logs box. Oh, it's dropping out the connection, then it's getting confused of when to enter the password again, and all this other stuff. But yeah, having those logs there definitely does help and troubleshoot for real as well. Let's see. Is there anything else? Does anyone else have anything they want to talk about with the data analytics? I know we're kind of wrapping up here a little bit more.
All right. So to Aaron Peterson's question in the chat, potential thing that people, if you hear a lot of complaints about a certain technology, how do you approach finding an alternative? So with wireless sharing. So we actually struggled through that, and I'll anonymize the data you know, to not call out any specific ones, but we're having issues, for example, with, and for a little bit of context first. So we're an all Mac campus, all Apple. So we basically, every student and every instructor has a MacBook Pro. So we have Apple TVs everywhere for wireless projection. In the rare instance that we have someone with a Windows machine that also wants to do screen sharing wirelessly, we had one product that we installed in a subset of places that had more use of um, Windows machines than Macs, put them there. We found that, yeah, there was a lot of, friction and people didn't like it. Yet the process of actually projecting your screen was a multi-step process. People complained it didn't work, and then they just stopped using it. And, we got complaints like, well, we'd really like to be able to wirelessly project. Like, well, you can. They're like, but it sucks. Okay. So what we did is we took a whole bunch of different solutions and installed them in a trial basis and worked directly with the instructors and said, all right, see if you can figure it out. If this showed up in a classroom, this is like the splash page that shows up when you select the source. How does it work? So we took a number of different faculty on purpose, people that are, self-described technophobes. They're like, oh, we don't like technology. Well, like, obviously, those are the people we want to evaluate it, and had some other, higher uh, tech enthusiasts check it out too. And then we evaluated that process, and whichever one really worked for everybody with the smoothest, most reliable process, that's kind of how we approach finding alternate technologies. We really don't deploy anything without really testing it with our users first. We learned that the hard way many years ago.
I
So
mean, you
does
can
that,
always go to the HETMA approved program and look at reports there. So
see, I was saving that one for you.
just saying. So uh, yeah, a very similar instance from you, Craig. I came from the health science campus is completely Mac. The whole rest of the university is PC. And what we found was the solutions that we were using at HSC uh, didn't translate well to the rest of the campus in that sense. What worked for the MacBooks and the even down to the display adapters and the things that we were using for in our classrooms weren't as compatible as we thought they would be across the path. So just trial and error, most of it. And I'll stump for it, but I also talking to you guys, talking, through the approved program, talking to the groups here on HETMA. You'll see me occasionally ask questions in the main chat, hey, has anybody been looking at this? Those kind of things in this community become one of the reasons I wanted to get involved in HETMA to begin with, was having those kind of conversations amongst ourselves, because there's somebody out there that is dealing with the same problems I am and may have already come up with a solution for it. So getting feedback from everybody in this group has been huge for us. It's driven a lot of our conversations and a lot of our decisions on our campus.
Yeah, I will say kind of the thing we're going in right now is we have a department on our campus that they like using the old smart symposium monitors, the old 4x3s, and their last batch
No,
is just now starting to die. And so
no.
we're going through that process right now of trying to find the most suitable touchscreen monitor that because they like when they're going through PowerPoint slides, they like adding in a new slide and writing out equations and whatnot on. But but they did try one manufacturer a while back in one of the rooms, and they had so many driver issues they just gave up and went back to some podium. So we're trying to go through that now, trying to find a good one to get some data on, have them test, and hopefully they'll end up liking it since there's not really a one-to-one of the symposium anymore. So we're going through that right now.
Yeah, we put in the Dell touchscreens, and it because we had symposiums too, and we had I can't remember the other brand that we had, but it took about 4 or 5 months for people to acclimate to the new Dell um, touchscreen, and so I think everyone's kind of come around to that, or they've moved to using the document camera or using an iPad, joining um, either USB into the PC for lecture capture, or just joining the Zoom with an extra device as a writing utensil.
Yeah, because the same faculty, like all their faculty have Microsoft Surfaces, so we put the wireless sharing in the rooms, and there are a couple of faculty members that they don't like tech, so they don't want to change over to this new thing. They want to keep their writing on the monitor. They don't want to carry around the Surface or put the Surface down to write on. So we're hoping to get some feedback from them, and hopefully we'll find them a good product there. Well. I think that's a kind of all I kind of had. I don't know if anyone has any last thoughts on data analytics and all that.
To answer Steve's question, we did classroom assessments with Talem for the first time this semester, just as a pilot, and it worked out really well. We were able to send our techs out and do real assessments on. That was kind of the data that we were able to give to facilities too, because we were able to say, um, the tech is good, but we've got 7 broken seats, and we have, data jacks that are pulled out of the wall, or there's no power over here, or something like that. We were able to put that in a report and hand off to facilities as well, as well as our AV assessment. I will say, I talked to them yesterday, and they approved me for saying that the mobile version is coming out in, I think, 3 or 4 months, and you'll be able to actually take pictures with your phone in the assessment and be able to spit that out as part of your report. So that's going to be a big thing for our techs going out and doing assessments, and doing, when they're out doing trouble tickets, being able to take pictures and put that into the ticket. So not stumbling for a particular program, but I do think they have built something special for higher ed.
Oh, am I supposed to be talking now? There's that awkward silence. I'm like, how long
Yeah,
do I wait before talking? Yeah.
you're up.
Okay, sure. So, I mean, yeah, just, I mean, I guess closing thoughts. I think it's really great to have everyone's perspective here. I know I learned a lot, so I hope everyone attending here learned something. There's a lot of things that we can do, and I think they're really great that I know I'm going to check out after this. So, I just want to say thank you for everyone here. Thanks for inviting me to be a part of this panel. It was a lot of fun, and thanks to everyone here for attending. And yeah, it's been great.
Definitely been a great study. I've definitely gone to take away some things here too, because it's good to know that we're kind of doing some of the same things that some others are doing, and some of our wants are also what some of our others are doing. So looking forward to that. Well, I definitely appreciate Craig and Donovan for joining me here for this panel. I hope everyone else got the same amount of goodness about data analytics, and hopefully it'll help drive that future of decision making in the future. But thanks again to y'all, and I guess PTC Optics as well for sponsoring on this session. But uh, that's that's all I got. Uh,